Gaza's Bloody Sunday. The Israelis massacre 60 Palestinian civilians in the Shuja'iyya neighborhood as the day's overall death toll climbs to 100. The Israeli premier boasts of strong international support for the Zionist aggression in Gaza, threatening to intensify the military operation. And Palestinian resistance groups deal a major blow to occupation forces, killing at least 15 soldiers from an elite Israeli brigade. Hello there, you're watching AEE TV World News and I'm Fatima Bassem. Sunday marked the single deadliest day in Gaza since the Israelis began with their onslaught against Palestinians in the coastal strip. Most of the casualties were the result of a massacre in the Shuja'iyya district in northern Gaza, where occupation forces slaughtered more than 60 civilians, injuring over 400 others. Sunday's bloodbath, which killed 100 people, brings the overall death toll in Gaza to 438 as the Israeli offensive continued for a 13th day. Balsam Atrash has more.
It's the 13th day of the Israeli onslaught against the Gaza Strip, and the death toll is rising fast. This is the neighborhood of Shuja'iyya in Gaza City, the latest setting of yet another Israeli perpetrated massacre against the civilian population here. Residents here are calling it Black Sunday, the day that at least 60 people were killed and thousands were forced to flee their homes as occupation forces shelled the densely populated area.
The tanks, warplanes, F-16 and artillery all hit us at one time. We could not even open the window to see what was happening. Each and every house in Shuja'iyya was shelled, if not a missile, then with a bomb. All homes were hit.
According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, rescue teams recovered dozens of dead bodies from the wreckage, including women and children.
There is a large number of casualties under the rubble of destroyed homes. The medical teams are still trying to evacuate people from under the debris of the totally banned areas of Shuja'iyya.
But helping the survivors will be a daunting task. The hundreds who took shelter at Al-Shifa hospital after the Israeli onslaught may be some of the lucky ones. Eyewitnesses recounted the horrors that are now behind them and the hardship still ahead of them.
I can't find my children. We all ran quickly. My children are lost. The house was shelled. I'm searching in the hospital for my children. After we left, they completely destroyed the house. We are living on the street now.
As for the Zionist forces, the massacre itself wasn't enough. The Israelis went on to deny ambulances access to attacked houses to evacuate victims, despite the fact that health workers in Gaza coordinated their efforts with the International Committee of the Red Cross. It is unlikely that this latest in a string of massacres will do much to alter the international community's stance towards the crisis. For the time being at least, it appears that the Israeli crimes and massacres against civilians will continue, leaving behind hundreds of dead, wounded, and homeless. Balsam Al-Atrash, Litijah TV, Shifa Hospital in Gaza.
Let's now speak to Balsam. She is joining us from Gaza. Balsam, give us a picture of what the situation in Gaza looks like.
Well, I actually want to start with the celebrating here in Gaza. I can hear fireworks and celebrations from the Palestinians, where Al-Qassam brigades had just announced that they had imprisoned an Israeli soldier during today's operation in Shuja'iyya area. The soldier's name, they announced the soldier's name, Shaul Aron. Shaul Aron is the soldier that was imprisoned by the Al-Qassam brigades, where they just announced it. I can hear that the Palestinians are celebrating this victory for the Palestinian resistance group battle in Shuja'iyya area. Returning back to the battle in Shuja'iyya, as you can see behind me, the Israeli military artillery and tanks are still shelling Shijaiya area with bombs and missiles. The battle is still ongoing. Also in other areas in Khan Yunis and Rafah, there has been reports of ongoing gunfire between Al-Qassam brigades and Israeli tanks on the border. Just before iftar, the Israeli artillery warplanes committed 2 massacres. The first massacre was in Gaza City on a residential tower, killing 8 Palestinians, 5 of them members of the same family. In Khan Yunis, another home, a 4-floor home was shelled in Khan Yunis just around iftar, which led to the death of 3 Palestinians, and 15 others are still under the rubble, with the medical teams trying to evacuate them.
Yes, and are hospitals being able to treat all these wounded?
Actually, the medical teams were banned today from entering Shijaiya area and other areas as well in eastern Deir al-Balah, where there was an ambush for Israeli soldiers. The Palestinian resistance groups ambushed the Israeli soldiers, injured some of them, and the Palestinian resistance group were injured, where they informed the Red Cross and the hospitals that they need medical teams. The medical teams coordinated with the Israeli enemy in order to evacuate some of the injured and killed resistance members. They agreed on a ceasefire in order for the medical teams to evacuate them, and then when the medical fires reached the place, they shot gunfire against them, which led to them leaving without evacuating any of the injured or killed Palestinian resistance members. Also in the Shijaiya area, they were banned from entering the area until there was a humanitarian ceasefire allowed by the Israelis in coordination with the Red Cross Committee. This ceasefire led allowed for the medical teams to enter the area and evacuate the wounded victims. They found around 60 Palestinians under the rubble. They actually expect that there are at least 40 others left. As you can hear and see from the view, that there are still shelling Shijaiya area with artillery and bombs. With the mosques right now celebrating
yes, Bassam, tell us
victory
how hard it is to get around Gaza with all these rockets and with the Israeli troops in Gaza.
Yes, it's really difficult to move around the Gaza Strip during this situation. The Israeli occupation forces are shooting randomly, targeting civilian streets, populated areas, residential towers and buildings in the center of the city, which makes moving very hard and transportation very hard for the Palestinians in the area. Also, today the Israeli army announced that they might enter tonight the second stage of this offensive against Gaza. The second stage includes separating the Gaza Strip into 3 different areas, which means they cut off the north, then the middle, and then the south. They cut between them so nobody can move from the north towards the middle and from the middle towards the south, making each area banned and not reachable.
Yes, and we can hear gunshots around you. How dangerous is it where you are, Balsam?
Actually, it is really dangerous. Today, the residential building that was hit was about 20 meters away from this building. This area here, I stand here in the center of Gaza City, is a really dangerous area. The Israeli warplanes targeted the building before they threatened to target it again. Actually, the areas around me, anybody in the street can be shot by the gunfire. It's been shooting randomly in the streets and in the skies. So if anybody, a woman today actually in Zawaida area had died from a gunfire when she opened her window to check on her family in the street. They were leaving to the supermarket to purchase some food. She opened the window and she got killed by a gunfire that was randomly fired against the area.
All right, Bansam, thank you for those latest updates and please stay safe. Meanwhile, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is undeterred by those civilian casualties. As a matter of fact, the Israeli leader said that there was very strong international support for his military's ongoing operation in Gaza. During a joint press conference with his War Minister Moshe Yaalon, Netanyahu threatened that the ground invasion on Gaza could be expanded in the coming days.
We're carrying out a complex, deep, intensive activity inside the Gaza Strip, and there is world support for this, very strong support within the international community.
Well, despite that expanding Israeli ground, air and sea offensive on Gaza, the Zionist regime has failed to prevent the Palestinian resistance from launching a counteroffensive. In the latest round of fighting, resistance groups killed at least 15 soldiers from the elite Israeli Golani brigades.
As Israeli bombs fall and destroy another life and home in Gaza, the suffering of the Palestinian people is somehow of an entertaining value to Israeli settlers, watching from a safe distance. Amid the expanded military assault against the Strip, but the onslaught of Israeli artillery shells and airstrikes pummeling Gaza has done little to dent the Palestinian resistance response to the Israeli occupation forces' brutal attacks. The Zionist regime has finally announced that 13 of their soldiers died and over 60 have been wounded since the beginning of the ground operation. However, the resistance have said they have killed 15 soldiers in clashes with the elite Golani brigade. This, along with the destruction of 7 tanks as they made their way into Gaza. And it's not just Israeli troops being fought off by the resistance. Settlements and cities deep in the occupied territories have received their fair share of rockets launched by Hamas and the Islamic Jihad. The sirens are constantly sounding in Tel Aviv, day and night, as rockets rain down on the most populous Israeli settlement. Some are being stopped by the Iron Dome, but more often than not, missiles are finding their targets as the conflict enters its 13th day and shows no signs of letting up.
Retired Lebanese Army General Ilyas Farhat joins us now from our Beirut studios. General Farhat, Netanyahu said he will expand as much as necessary. How far are the Israelis aiming to take these operations in Gaza?
Netanyahu, on the third day of this 14-day war, announced that he received plans from the military leadership about the land attack. So he is talking about this offensive 9 days or 10 days ago. And every day after another, he also talks about expanding the land operation. And Thursday night, the army command declared that the land offensive has started, and it's today now is the 4th day. It's not known what is the Mr. Netanyahu talking about expanding. He is already expanding, but the resistance confronted his expansion and resisted the the Israeli army and the elite units of the Israeli army, the Golani units, received a big blow from the resistance when they killed 15 of their and wounded more than dozens from this brigade. So talking about expanding is something directed to the domestic public opinion in Israel in order to convince them that he did not expand yet, or he did not use all his force. He has already launched air attacks, about more than 2,000 air attacks against the targets inside Gaza, and he shelled the city from the sea, from artillery, from tanks, and now he's talking about expanding. If he really means what's expanding, expanding means that he was expanding 2 days ago and was confronted by a fierce resistance from the Hamas and Jihad in Gaza.
Yes, now the Israelis are beginning to feel the losses, as you said there, and we just heard moments ago that the Al-Qassam brigades are holding an Israeli soldier hostage. As the stakes get higher, will the Israelis continue escalating with their attacks?
I think when the resistance started to infiltrate to the backyard of the Israeli massing camps, and they attacked and ambushed vehicles of the Israeli and killed and injured many Israelis, and then they withdrew back through the tunnels to their bases. That means this is a new kind of operations was introduced by the resistance in this war. And even though the Netanyahu is threatening to expand, they are expanding these infiltrations for many settlements that are on the borders of Gaza Strip. And they also confronted an attempt from landing on the seashore of Gaza by the Israeli special forces of the Navy. And now kidnapping a soldier is something that with a high quality operation which is directed towards the public of Israel and to the home front, and for the pride and arrogance of the army and the military leaders in Israel, that an army with a budget of $15 billion and the 8th army in the world is now confronting very poor people, but they are very rich in their faith and they're resolute in order to defend their dignity and their land. This means a lot to Israel that Hamas or the Qassam brigades kidnapped one of its soldiers in these operations. This will be pointed to the arrogance and the pride of the Israel army or the Israeli military as a whole.
And what do you think the Israelis are aiming to achieve by the killing of these civilians, innocent civilians? Is it part of their psychological warfare, or are they trying to get something more by occupying Gaza?
As usual, Israeli target civilians and kill more and more civilians, aiming at inciting the public or the people of Gaza against the resistance. That means that they want the people of Gaza to protest the leadership of the resistance, the political leadership or the military leadership of the resistance, to stop fighting Israel in order to avoid the Israeli revenges against the civilians. But this does not make any sense during Pillars of Clouds in 2012 and during Castled in 2008-2009, and now I don't think it will make a sense with the people now, which are fully stand fully behind their leadership to confront the Israeli aggression.
All right, retired Lebanese Army General Ilyas Farhad, thank you for speaking to Ali Tija.
You're welcome.
Well, diplomatic efforts to broker a ceasefire in Gaza are intensifying, with UN Chief Ban Ki-moon meeting Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in the Qatari capital Doha. Ban also met with members of the Qatari monarchy who called for an immediate end to the violence in Gaza. The UN chief is due to travel to Kuwait, Egypt and occupied Palestine in the coming days. The ongoing brutal Israeli assault on Gaza has unified people around the world in a show of sympathy towards the suffering of innocent civilians and disgust at the long list of war crimes being committed against the Palestinians. From Tel Aviv to London to Sydney, massive rallies were held condemning the ongoing Zionist crackdown as thousands called for the halt to the bloodshed.
Divided by distance, but united in anger, the Israeli brutality against Palestinians in Gaza has awakened a sense of solidarity among the international community and shed light to the ongoing Zionist massacres being committed on a daily basis. The wave of condemnation hit the heart of the Israeli entity. Israeli settlers gathered in Tel Aviv to decry their regime's policies.
I believe that it's very important to resist this military operation, this war, the carnage in Gaza, because it's unnecessary and it's inhumane, and the Israeli government is the one which chose war and not peace. It failed the peace talks by the settlement construction, and they provoked and promoted this war.
Occupation no more! In the British capital London, an estimated 100,000 people made the march from the government's headquarters in Downing Street to the Israeli embassy in Kensington. Palestinian flags were raised and anti-Israeli sentiment was high. This sentiment was echoed in Australia, where demonstrators rallied outside Sydney's town hall to call for an immediate end to the Zionist war crimes.
We're not talking about war, we're not talking about killing. Israel doing the killing and accusing the Muslim people as a terrorist. We're not a terrorist, they are a bloody terrorist.
Meanwhile, in the French capital Paris, pro-Palestinian protests turned violent when police fired tear gas and stun grenades to disperse the crowds who defied a government ban, which prohibits protests against the Israeli regime. As the Zionist war machine continues to commit atrocious crimes against the Palestinians, rallies like this will inevitably continue around the world.
You're watching AEE TV World News, still to come. Accusations and counter-accusations cloud the investigation into the downing of the Malaysian airliner in eastern Ukraine. Welcome back to AEE TV World News. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Gaza's Bloody Sunday. The Israelis massacre 60 Palestinian civilians in the Shuja'iyya neighborhood as the day's overall death toll climbs to 100. The Israeli premier boasted strong international support for the Zionist aggression in Gaza, threatening to intensify the military operation. And Palestinian resistance groups deal a major blow to occupation forces, killing at least 15 soldiers from an elite Israeli brigade. The Islamic State militant group has claimed responsibility for the deadly Baghdad bombings in which 24 people were killed. Meanwhile, the Iraqi army is gaining ground in its fight against insurgents, taking control of the town just north of the capital, Baghdad.
Tallying up the dead from the indiscriminate wave of bombings has become the norm for Iraqis. Nowhere is this more evident than in the capital, Baghdad. The claim of responsibility by the so-called Islamic State militants comes as little surprise to many here. 24 people were killed in near-simultaneous blasts in the Iraqi capital. The extremist militants boasted on one of their affiliate websites that 2 suicide bombers, a Syrian and a German, were behind the attacks. But the Iraqi security forces are fighting back. The latest militant attacks come on the backdrop of a major security operation in Baghdad by the Iraqi army. The security forces succeeded in wresting back a district northeast of the capital from Islamic State militants after heavy fighting that lasted more than 14 hours. Troops backed by SWAT and Iraq's elite forces managed to dislodge militants from the Al-Haruniya district in the town of Muqdadiya northeast of the capital.
Security forces have managed to completely clear Al-Haruniya district, and the area is now under the full control of the army, which has carried out a number of attacks over the past 48 hours and managed to clear the area, killing at least 59 terrorists and destroying 5 different vehicles.
Along with this successful operation, the Iraqi army has forged ahead in the fight to eliminate IS from the north of the country, where they have maintained a strong presence since taking control of Iraq's second city of Mosul last month. Now the Iraqi Christians have begun to migrate away from the ancient city of Nineveh. But it is not just Christians who feel threatened by the presence of the Al-Qaeda offshoot in northern Iraq. Many minority groups have already fled.
The Christians in Nineveh Plain and other places are used to living there for hundreds and thousands of years. They are the native people. Now the armed gangs are targeting them and asking them to leave or they will be killed. So what Islam are they talking about? I call upon the brothers at home, including Turkmen, Shabak, Christians, and all the sects that are liable to genocide, to stand in their lands and defend their areas, because these areas are targeted so that the demography of the area can be changed.
It is up to the Iraqi army to stop this demographic change. This footage shows the army patrolling parts of Tikrit, where it has been reporting gains in recent weeks. Among those fleeing their homes from cities like Mosul, many will be hoping the government troops will soon retake militant-controlled areas.
Meanwhile, calls for Kurdish independence have grown louder following clashes between Peshmerga forces and Islamic State militants. Our correspondent Wissam Bayati shows us the difficulties the Kurds are facing in trying to establish a state amid an ensuing crisis in Iraq.
In the midst of the instability in Iraq and the growing tensions between the central government and the Kurdistan regional government, the Kurdish President Masoud Barzani has once again announced Kurdistan's readiness for independency. Few hours after the announcement, the Kurdish forces have been attacked by the Islamic State affiliates in the outskirts of the oil-rich city of Kirkuk, in which more than 90 Peshmerga soldiers have been killed in the 2 hours clashes. The Kurdish plan was announcing the independency of Kurdistan from Iraq after the annexation of Kirkuk to Kurdistan and the other so-called disputed areas in Diyala, Salahuddin and Mosul provinces. According to the newly released intelligence reports, the Islamic State is trying to expand its territories in the country, and they want to control the oil wells in Kirkuk. Many experts believe that the Kurdish leadership is facing many new challenges.
Kurdistan today is facing many challenges and obstacles to gain its independence from Iraq. The ideology of the Islamic State terrorist group, the instability in Iraq, the tensions between Baghdad and Erbil, and the regional rejection of establishing a Kurdish state in the Middle East are the main facts the Kurdish leadership has to tackle.
On the other hand, many others stress that Kurdistan does not have the requirements to establish an independent state, and the attempts of the Kurdish officials to weaken the central government to achieve the independency will not succeed.
The Kurdish officials have tried in many occasions to keep the Iraqi government as weak as they can, but the problem is not only with the central government. Kurdistan does not have the requirements to establish their own state or even announce their independence from Iraq.
The President Mas'ud Barzani tried to announce Kurdistan's independence in 2003 after the US-led invasion, but the declaration faced a strong opposition from the US and the neighboring countries.
The independent Kurdish state is a Kurdish dream has been going on since more than 70 years ago, and whether the Kurdish officials will succeed in achieving this dream regardless to the internal and regional opposition remains to be seen. Wissam Al-Biati, Al-Ittijah, from the Iraqi capital, Baghdad.
Well, let's now speak to Wissam for the latest in Iraq. Wissam, how has the army been able to secure the capital, Baghdad, from militants?
Hello, Wissam. The militants have actually conducted several attacks in different parts of the Iraqi capital and even the country. As the attacks took place in mostly the Shia populated areas. The attacks were targeting the civilians, and some other checkpoints were actually manned by the Baghdad Military Operations Center. In addition to, they are aimed at destabilizing the security situation, especially after the achievements which were made by the Iraqi security forces in the province of Tikrit. As the Iraqi forces today have actually established 3 FOBs or forward operation bases inside the province of Mosul or inside the city of Mosul, and they are heading, according to the top security officials, towards the main routes leading or links between Tikrit and Mosul. So far, the refinery of Beiji is still under the control of the Iraqi security forces, but at the same time, the attacks are repeatedly taking place, and mostly taking place on a daily basis, in addition to the reinforcement of the Iraqi security forces. According to the top security officials, they say that the reinforcement will come to the main route after wiping all the militants from the main route to link the both provinces of Mosul and Salahuddin through this route. In addition to the deployment of the Iraqi security forces were intensified and increased in and around the province of Mosul, Tikrit, and according to the spokesperson of the Iraqi Armed Forces, Lieutenant General Qasim Atta, we stated that the next move will be towards the province of Mosul, and afterwards the Iraqi security forces will move towards the province of Kirkuk to take out the Peshmerga as they refuse to withdraw from the province or the oil-rich city of Kirkuk. Yes.
All right, Wissam, thank you for those updates. All that ongoing bloodshed in Iraq has made cemeteries some of the busiest places in the country. Wadi Salam, or the Valley of Peace, is located in Iraq's holy city of Najaf and is well known for being one of the world's biggest burial grounds.
Early in the morning in the Iraqi holy city of Najaf, the liveliest place is its cemetery. Sad convoys of families accompanied the bodies of young men in makeshift coffins, the latest generation to fall victim to Iraq's seemingly never-ending cycle of violence.
People who are buried here sacrifice their blood and lives to defend the country and the holy sites.
Bodies have been flooding from across the country to be buried in Wadi al-Salam, or the Valley of Peace, one of the world's biggest cemeteries.
My brother is a martyr. He died in Samarra 3 months ago defending the holy sites.
Graves stretch away into the horizon, many adorned with garlands of plastic flowers and photos of young men spotted by the sun. Such clutch weapons, fresh-faced in their military fatigues, others in shiny shirts, as if at a wedding. People chose this cemetery to bury their loved ones for its importance. It lies near Imam Ali's shrine. By doing so, they hope their deceased family member might finally rest in peace.
According to a monthly UN nuclear watchdog report, Iran has moved to eliminate its most sensitive stockpile of enriched uranium gas under an interim nuclear deal with 6 world powers reached last year. The report by the International Atomic Energy Agency showed that Iran had met the terms of the 6-month agreement. The deadline for a comprehensive agreement between Tehran and the P5+1, which had been due to expire on Sunday, will be extended after the two sides failed to reach a deal during the latest round of talks in Vienna. Tunisian authorities are clamping down on organizations associated with Takfiri groups, just days after extremist militants killed 15 soldiers. The Tunisian government issued a statement saying that a satellite channel and a radio station have been shut down as they have been used as platforms to promote terrorism. Several mosques will also be closed if they operate without the supervision of the Ministry of Religious Affairs or celebrated the killing of Tunisian army members. Islamist militias launched their heaviest assault so far on Libya's main airport in the capital Tripoli, 2 days after a truce with the rival ex-rebels who control the facility collapsed.
The battle for control of Libya's main international airport has resumed as a 2-day-old truce between rival militias broke down. Libyan aviation security sources announced that the airport was attacked on Sunday morning with mortar rounds, rockets and tank fire, adding that it was the most intense bombardment so far. Islamist militiamen first attacked the airport last Sunday, forcing a halt to all flights. Their continued offensive has caused extensive damage to planes and airport infrastructure that aviation officials say will keep it closed for months. According to a Libyan security official, at least 2 people were killed when a stray rocket hit their house, as rival militias exchanged heavy fire around Tripoli's international airport. Gunfire and blasts were also heard in Abu Salim neighborhood, just south of the airport, as battles pitched rival militias against each other. The week-long battle over the airport is being waged by a powerful militia from the western city of Zintan, which controls the facility, and Islamist-led militias including fighters from Misrata, to the east of Tripoli. The clashes come as Libya's fractured government sought United Nations help to prevent the country from becoming a failed state. Relentless violence across Libya over the past few months has sparked fears of an all-out civil war, with many fearing that the country could become a hub for attracting extremists across the globe.
Now off to Lebanon, where security forces killed an al-Qaeda bomb maker and arrested another prominent militant suspect during a raid in the northern city of Tripoli. The latest marks yet another blow to efforts of militant groups to launch terrorist attacks in Lebanon.
Tensions ran high in Lebanon's second-largest city on Sunday morning after a terrorist suspect was killed and wanted Salafist militiaman was arrested during raids carried out by Lebanese security forces. Munzir al-Hassan, accused of providing explosives for a suicide bomber who wounded 3 security officers in the Duray Hotel in Beirut in June, was killed during a raid on his home by the Lebanese security services. The army attempted to negotiate with Hassan in a bid to convince him to surrender, even asking his paternal aunt to take part in the negotiations. But Hassan was killed after tossing a stun grenade at security personnel while holed up in his apartment. The morning light revealed the aftermath of the raid. Empty bullet casings littered the building and broken glass from numerous damaged windows was swept away. Security forces had intelligence that Hassan provided explosive belts and material to a terrorist cell that was planning to carry out major attacks in Lebanon. Meanwhile, Hussam al-Sabagh was arrested at a checkpoint in the same city. Sabagh, a prominent backer of the armed revolt against Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, is suspected of recruiting and sending fighters across the border. Lebanese security officials said he stands accused of setting up an armed band and training terrorists, as well as having links to Al-Qaeda and the radical group Fatah al-Islam.
Investigations continued into the crash of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17, with Ukraine accusing rebels of hiding evidence of a missile attack they say led to the disaster.
Ukraine accused pro-Russian rebels of hiding evidence that a Russian missile was used to shoot down Malaysian airliner MH17 3 days ago.
The rebels are doing everything to hide all possible evidence of the involvement of Russia missile in the shooting down of that airliner. If they were sincere, they would have provided all experts with access to the site of tragedy, to the whole square where search operation is taking place, and wouldn't prevent our rescuers from doing their job. They are operating under barrels of guns.
In the past few days, Washington and its allies have pointed the finger at the pro-Russian separatists who have Moscow's backing and have been accused of obstructing access to the crashed sites.
You know, there's a buildup of extraordinary circumstantial evidence. You know, I'm a former prosecutor. I've tried cases on circumstantial evidence. It's powerful here. But even more importantly, we picked up the imagery of this launch. We know the trajectory, we know where it came from, we know the timing, and it was exactly at the time that this aircraft disappeared from the radar. We also know from voice identification that the separatists were bragging about shooting it down afterwards. So there's a stacking up of evidence here which Russia needs to help account for.
Moscow has denied involvement in the shooting down of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 on Thursday and has blamed the Ukrainian military. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council was considering a draft resolution to condemn the attack, demand armed groups allow access to the crash sites, and call on states in the region to cooperate with an international investigation. Australia, which lost 36 citizens in the crash, circulated a draft text to the Council late on Saturday, and it could be put to a vote as early as Monday. The move comes as the Donetsk Self-Defense Forces said items thought to be the stricken Boeing's black boxes had been found and were in rebel hands and showed willingness to hand the data to international monitors.
I can tell you that as of today, we have found some technical details of this plane, which we suppose can be those black boxes, the so-called black boxes. These objects have been delivered to the city of Donetsk and are under my control. We're expecting the representatives of a specialized organization, the ICAO in this case, whom we're ready to pass these objects of the plane's technical equipment.
The downing of the airliner with the loss of nearly 300 lives has sharply escalated the crisis in Ukraine and may mark a pivotal moment in international efforts to resolve the deteriorating situation in the Russian-speaking east of the country.
Researchers in Singapore are developing a new type of peptide-based hydrogel that acts as a natural scaffold, allowing burn wounds to heal faster while decreasing the risk of infection.
Researchers in Singapore say this gel will change the way burns are treated. It's made of short strings of amino acids called peptides, and Charlotte Hauser has figured out a way to make them self-assemble into a gel that heals burns better and faster than current treatments.
So these peptides form these fibers and then they can make scaffolds. Scaffolds you can imagine as a fisher net into 3D.
When applied to burn wounds, these 3D fishing net-like structures provide damaged skin cells with an ideal environment to regenerate. In lab trials, burns treated with the gel healed completely after 2 weeks, while wounds treated with a silicone dressing only healed 67% over the same period.
So we can run the same reaction instead of with.
Hauser says her nanogel, developed at the Institute of Bioengineering and Nanotechnology, could also impact the cosmetics industry.
We can handle it in a different way. We can even inject it. So even here, for my wrinkles, which I already have here a few, we can use it for for example, dermal fillers. We have a study running on dermal fillers as well.
Her team is now working on producing the peptide gel on an industrial scale and hope to make a simple spray-on burn treatment a reality to anyone in need.
Almost affected.
An American man from Virginia has claimed a swath of unrecognized land between Sudan and Egypt for his 7-year-old daughter. Ahmed Saeed Ahmed now with this modern-day fairy tale.
Many strange things may have happened this month, but this is by far the strangest. A man was playing with his 7-year-old daughter in Abingdon, Virginia, USA, when she asked him if she could become a real princess. A year later, the father, Jeremiah Heaton, was trekking through the Sahara Desert between Sudan and Egypt and claimed a swath of land known as Bir Tawil.
Bir Tawil is 2,060 square kilometers in area. It has no inhabitants and is mostly desert and sand. In 1899, the Anglo-Egyptian rule of Sudan set the boundary at the 22nd parallel. Later, in 1902, the United Kingdom, holding hegemony over the area, drew an administrative border based on actual use of the land by tribes, setting Bir Tawil in Egypt and Halab under the British governor of Sudan. Egypt recognizes the border of 1899. Sudan recognizes that of 1902. The two claims rendered Halab claimed by both and Bir Tawil by neither.
The Heatons gave Bir Tawil the name of the Kingdom of North Sudan. They appeared in family pictures standing by a flag that was designed by Heaton's 3 children. Jeremiah and his wife even asked family and friends to refer to their daughter Emily as a princess. Jeremiah Heaton made the trip to Bir Tawil and tried to make his little daughter's wish come true. But in reality, what are the prospects of this ever becoming a serious affair? And what, if any, repercussions are to come out of this? For a country to have political sovereignty, it must be recognized by neighboring states as well as regional and international institutions. In this case, recognition is needed from Sudan and Egypt as neighboring countries, in addition to the African Union and the United Nations.
Sudan and Egypt have, if anything, responded rather feebly. The whole issue may seem too trivial to warrant serious consideration from them politically or diplomatically. It's just a family affair where a father is merely trying to make his children happy.
Heaton traveled to Egypt and from there he proceeded to Bir Tawil. He even professed to having plans of turning the area into an agricultural hub to contribute to the region.
This man may be trying to benefit from the situation in the region with Egypt having a new president and regime in place now. He may be trying to wedge this issue into any future shape of relation Cairo and Khartoum may develop.
Serious or not, Jeremiah Heaton certainly made the news for the past few days. He says he will seriously pursue future steps to legalize his claim, and analysts say that the story is likely to produce no more developments than the publicity it had so far yielded. Ahmed Saeed Ahmed, Al-Ittijah News Channel, Khartoum.
Here's a reminder of our top stories. Gaza's Bloody Sunday. The Israelis massacre 60 Palestinian civilians in the Shuja'iyya neighborhood as the day's overall death toll climbs to 100. The Israeli premier boasted strong international support for the Zionist aggression in Gaza, threatening to intensify the military operation. And the Palestinian resistance groups deal a major blow to occupation forces, killing at least 15 soldiers from an elite Israeli brigade. Well, that's all from me and the Al-Ittijah News team. Thank you for watching and good night.